Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case, a rare gift for Christmas. My 6-year-old daughter Mandy and I were doing some last-minute Christmas shopping on Christmas Eve. She had been well-behaved all day as we gal-palled around the mall. I just had one last stop to make before leaving. I wanted to check a department store for a shirt for my mom. I only looked away long enough to compare 2 articles of clothing. That's all the time it took for her to disappear. I knew better. I knew how she was, just as all kids are. The ornate tree, the twinkling lights, a toy train delivering presents around the bottom of the tree, pictures of Santa, toy displays, racks full of candy. There's a lot to attract a child's attention. At the same time, though, you expect your child to let go of you and explore at a reasonable distance. It's part of growing up. So, when I turned around and she wasn't there, I didn't immediately panic. It wasn't unlike her to wander off. I called for her calmly. I searched the nearby racks because she liked to hide and make me worry. I switched to a more authoritative tone that usually brought her out of hiding. When it didn't, my voice cracked as it shot up several octaves when I began to panic. My voice grew louder as terror seized me. Other shoppers became concerned, watching me, whispering. An older gentleman offered to go find the store manager. We had the store manager call Mandy on the PA. I waited anxiously at the customer service desk, biting my nails, waiting for her to come running up like it was no big deal. She never came. We contacted mall security, who called the police. The mall was shut down and searched. A detective by the name of Sam Renfro kept asking me questions. I answered his questions, but it was hard to concentrate. I kept looking over his shoulder, past him. I wanted to be looking for my child. My heart sank when an officer walked up with her doll in his hand. He found it by one of the rear exits. One of those exits only mall employees are supposed to use. At that point, the detective concluded that we were dealing with an abduction. Horrible, uncontrollable thoughts raced through my mind. I failed her as a parent. She must be so scared. Is he being mean to her? Is he abusing her? Does he intend on sexually abusing her? Selling her? Is he some kind of psycho killer who will take pleasure in torturing her? I hadn't realized it, but I was saying those things out loud after I nearly collapsed. Detective Renfro had caught me and was holding me steady. All he would say was, "Ma'am, we'll do everything we can to find your daughter." The police issued an Amber Alert and set a perimeter to begin searching the surrounding neighborhoods. The detective told me that the best thing for me to do was to go home and wait by the phone. I couldn't see it being a ransom case, personally. I'm a software engineer. I do better than most, but am by no means rich. But as the detective explained, rich looks different depending on whose eyes you are looking through. Debt can sometimes make people desperate, and desperate people do dumb things. In all truth, I didn't want to leave. I wanted to head that investigation. I wanted to know what was going on at all times and be in full control of what was being done. But deep down inside, I knew that wasn't what was best for Mandy. The police chief made an appearance to handle the mob of news crews outside the mall, thank goodness. Their questions were overwhelming, pressing, and unsympathetic. I made a statement. I offered $100,000 for the safe return of my daughter, most of what I had in savings. Then the chief insisted that an officer take me home. I'm glad he did. My head was on a swivel, trying to look into every car, at every child, and everywhere else I could see. I surely would have wrecked on the way home. When I got home and inside, that's when it really hit me. I let loose and cried at the sight of her little snow boots sitting by the door. There was nothing more I could do, and her absence was unmistakably felt. I poured myself some wine, but I didn't feel like eating, so I took my cell phone to the couch to wait for a call, any call. Before I got to the couch, I noticed it. On a square, glass coffee table, sitting like a centerpiece, was a present. It was wrapped in black with a red ribbon tied in a bow. It had a foreboding look about it. It didn't say who it was from, but someone had obviously been in my house. The only two people who had keys and access codes were my mother and best friend. I found their choice of wrapping unbecoming and the lack of a tag unusual. But I wiped my eyes and opened the package. Inside was one of those old tape recorders, the rectangle ones with the speaker, cassette deck, and function buttons on the end. A tape was inside, so I pressed play. There were some distorted whispers at first. Then I heard a sniffle and Mandy say, "Mommy, he's hurting me," through deep sobs. I became frantic at the sound of her voice. I kept asking, "Who, baby? Who's hurting you?" as if she could hear me. Then a man's voice I didn't recognize said, "Merry Christmas, bitch. We'll be in touch." Why did he call me a bitch? Because he knew me, and that was his opinion of me. I called Detective Renfro right away. He came over immediately with a crew to tap the phones. The detective stayed with me that night. I offered him the guest room, but he preferred the couch. I couldn't sleep, so I was up all night, playing on my phone, waiting for it to ring. It wasn't until 10 in the morning that the kidnapper called. $100,000? Do you think you can buy your way out of this? You killed my kid. Now I'm going to kill yours. He hung up, and I started screaming. You know how someone jumps out when you're not expecting it and scares you? That was how his words hit me, but 10 times over. Detective Renfro grabbed me and lowered me to the floor. Shh, shh. She's not dead yet. She's not dead yet. Help me find her, Kate. Help me find her. Who did you kill? Who did you kill? I was trying to calm down, but my breathing was so quick, I felt like I couldn't breathe. The detective had to help me calm my breathing before I could even begin to answer him. I don't know what he's talking about, I told him between gasps of air. He has the wrong person. I watched the detective's eyes widen as he slumped down on the floor, lost in thought. Are you sure? I mean, was there ever an instance where someone might have thought you were responsible for the death of the child? I thought for a moment. Then it hit me. Jeffrey Clark. It's Clark. I began to shout, excitedly. He T-boned me at an intersection. He claimed I was responsible for the accident, but it was ruled that he ran a red light. It was one of those, I think I can make it situations gone wrong. His daughter died in the accident. Jeffrey Clark has my baby. Detective Renfro got on the radio and put out an APB and a request for Clark's address. We got into the detective's car and started driving. When we got to Clark's home, he was gone. Police were ransacking it anyway. Detective Renfro had me wait in the car while he went to talk to the officer in charge. I saw him go in for a few minutes and come back out. When he got back into the car, he told me that Clark had been surveilling me for a long time. They found photographs and journals inside. He told me he knew where Clark was taking Mandy. Lights lit up and sirens blared as we sped away. The detective turned down what looked like an ATV trail in the woods about 15 miles from Clark's house. out in the country. There was a house there, not much of one though. It looked more like a clubhouse house for hunting or something. We went shooting past that, the undercarriage of Renfro's sedan bottoming out on every bump. The trees opened up onto what looked like a frozen, hard, mudding pit. In the distance, an old truck rammed a small car, pushing it along until it rolled over. The truck whipped around, gained speed, and hit the little car again, straight on. Police cruisers sped past us. They started ramming the truck, forcing it away from the car, and a chase through the field was on. Renfro and I pulled up next to the little car. I was hysterically running up to the car. I knew Mandy had to be in there. When I looked through the shattered window, I saw that the entire interior of the car had been removed. She had been knocked around in there, unrestrained. She was unconscious and bleeding. Renfro used his gun to knock away shards of glass that were stuck in the window frame and crawled in. I was holding my breath, hoping she was still alive. He said she was still breathing, but didn't want to move her. He climbed out of the car and radioed for fire and ambulance. Jeffrey Clark was eventually forced into a tree. He tried to flee on foot, but didn't get far. He was arrested, charged with kidnapping and attempted murder, then was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Mandy is paralyzed from the waist down. It took a lot of therapy for her to get over the trauma she experienced over those 2 days. She has moved on now. She has adapted to life in a wheelchair and is just as happy as I am that she is still alive. Every time I look at her, flashes of that horrible day flood my mind. They make me realize how lucky I am. Children are kidnapped every day across the nation. According to the incident studies of missing, abducted, runaway, and thrown away children, ISMART, 2,300 children go missing in the U.S. every day. Many of those children are never reunited with their families. You have no idea what you are getting into. I am no saint, but no one really is. Some people are less evil. Some people are more evil. I have done things I am not proud of and will have to live with the consequences once they come. I do, however, refuse to feel guilt for what I have done. There are reasons behind my actions, and no one will convince me they are not for the greater good. I am writing here in my diary to be able to get it off my chest, as I cannot speak to anyone about it. I wish I could scream it from the top of my lungs, but I can't. If the secret comes out, it probably will be huge. The local media are already talking about it, and when they catch whoever did it, it will be loud. In my mind, I am a hero, but in people's eyes, I will not be. If anyone is reading this, probably after I have been caught, know this. I refuse to feel bad about it. I meant what I did every time. My heart is pounding with excitement, but I close my notebook and rest my head on the wall behind me. I've been doing my assignments for over a year already, but even thinking about them makes my heart race. It gives me rush, flushes my cheeks, and keeps me motivated to keep going. I love everything about it. I look at the time on my watch and get off the bed. Time for my double shift at the bar. I put on one of my tightest blouses with low cleavage, comfortable jeans, and tie my hair in half up, half down style. Touch of lipstick, mascara, shoes, and I am ready to go. As I walk out of the house, I feel the cold breeze tickle my skin and I shiver. I hate cold. As fast as I can, I lock the door and rush to the car. When I arrive at the bar, there are quite a few customers in already, even though it is only 5 p.m. I drop my bag off at my locker and wash my hands before I walk out to the main room. The music isn't very loud yet, thankfully. The outside daylight is still shining through, ruining the night out vibe, and people are divided between drinking coffees or beers. No spirits in their hands just yet. I make small talk with the colleague I'm taking over from before they leave, and I make my way to the right side of the bar to check if all fruits and garnishes are restocked and ready for the night. For those who never worked at a bar, they never are after a day shift. I slice lemons and oranges, moving onto the limes, when I hear the sound of a metal knocking gently on the polished wooden bar. I look up and immediately smile. My partner in crime is here. She is the most gorgeous woman I have ever met. Has long, curly black hair, bright blue eyes, and a smile I could not stop thinking about. I pour her a whiskey on the rocks and without a word, let her casually look around for the first 10 minutes. "Is your cockroach here already?" I ask, and she shakes her head. "I don't expect him here so early," she replies with a soft sigh. "Besides, I wanted to give you some attention before I see him." I smile and roll my eyes. "Lizzie, keep your flirting skills for the boys. I know what a sneaky little snake you are." She laughs at my joke, but doesn't reply. "How did you meet this one?" She grabs her glass and swirls it around, watching the almost melted ice cubes float in circles. "I accidentally bumped into him at the grocery store, very conveniently wearing one of my cutest dresses. We have been chatting on my fake phone for a week now. And he is definitely the one that did it?" I almost whisper, leaning closer towards her face. "Yes, Polly. He did do all of those unspeakable things to that girl a year ago." She whispers back, and I can smell the whiskey coming from her breath. "Then his rich daddy hired a lawyer, paid off some of the important people, and the cockroach is enjoying his life." She puts the glass down and straightens back in her chair. Not for long, though. We make small talk as the time goes, in between me serving customers until about 6 p.m. when the cockroach walks in. He is a tall man with brown, messy hair, sharp jawline, and dressed nicely in some expensive clothes. I can't tell you what brand they are because I know nothing about it, but the way he wears them with cockiness, I can tell he spent money. His dad's money, I remind myself, and continue wiping the already clean bar, trying to make myself look busy. Liz gets up from her chair, greets him with a kiss on the cheek, and sits back down in front of me. They order a round of drinks, and she starts to work her magic. They spend hours on chatting and laughing, although I know Liz is faking it. She always does. When the clock strikes 9 p.m. and her date is pretty tipsy, they order the next round of drinks. I make them and turn my back to the camera to grab the lemon off the cutting board, with the pill between it and my finger, and I drop it in his drink. When he starts talking incoherently, Liz grabs his arm and quietly walks him out of the bar. I wait a few minutes before I ask my colleague to look after the bar as I need a quick break and leave as well. I find them in a back alley, the cockroach sitting sloppily on the floor, resting his back and head on the wall, and Liz standing above him, looking at her phone. As soon as I walk up to them, she looks up. I spoke to his victim. The girl was still so upset about what happened. She whispers, with anger in her eyes. This piece of... He took something away from her she will never get back. He deserves what is coming his way. I don't reply, but nod in agreement. I look at the guy's face and feel disgusted that he not only felt it was okay to do what he did, but also decided consequences are not for him to handle. My stomach feels tight, something heavy like rocks growing inside it. I am not sure if it is from nerves, stress, disgust, or excitement from what is coming. It is Liz's time to deal with the man, and I need to get back to work soon enough. I help her tie his hands and feet, put him in the boot of the rented car, and turn to Liz. He should have admitted and faced the punishment. I hear Liz say as she slowly walks towards the driver's door. She isn't looking at me, and I am not sure if she is talking to herself or me. He is a gross, creepy cockroach who has done something horrible and he needs to pay. The smug smile he had on his face when the case was dismissed, knowing he got away with it. I see her shake her head in the streetlight falling on her from above. Well, he didn't. They don't anymore. I whisper back and walk into the bar. HIM. I can feel the headache getting worse as the shouts don't end. Mr. Robertson came to report his son's missing, but ever since we took all the information and said we will look into it, he has been shouting at various officers. He wanted the whole station up at this moment and searching for his son. We tried explaining to him that we will not be able to find him within the next hour, so when he kept shouting, we threw him out, threatening with a ticket. I spin around in my chair to look at the cork board again, but feel hopeless. Missing men keep being added to it, but no more clues have been discovered. I feel like a complete idiot. Ryder Robertson's picture have now been added to the right side of the board, alongside Henry's, Lewis's, Christian's, and Jake's. All of these men, various ages, occupations, and lives, have been missing, and it was my job to find them. I hear someone walking up to my desk, and I turn to see my partner Jesse. I could put an egg on your head and would be able to fry it within a minute, he says and smiles at his joke, but I don't smile back. I am too tense. Hey, I know it is hard, but with a new victim, there is a possibility for potential clues. I nod without saying anything and turn back to the board. Maybe walk me through what connects these men. Sometimes speaking things out loud helps to see things that could have been missed. I sigh but agree, for the sake of not having any other ideas. Henry, aged 54, went missing in April 2023. In February 2023, he was found not guilty for domestic violence on his wife. Lewis, aged 22, missing in July 2023. There was an old report to the police about attacking his ex-girlfriend, but she came back to retract the report, saying they just argued and she was okay. Chris went missing only a week after Lewis. They are the same age. I don't, however, have anything that links him to the rest of the guys, so maybe he is not part of it. Jake, aged 32, went missing in December 2023, only 3 months after his lawyer argued that 5 women that came forward from his company about inappropriate behavior towards them were unstable emotionally and had a vendetta against him. So the case was dismissed. And now, we have Ryder, who a year ago assaulted a girl, but somehow the DNA samples the doctors collected disappeared right before the trial. All of them have been seen with a woman at a bar the night before they went missing. So, the only thing that connects these men are vile actions against women. What if the women did it? I laugh and roll my eyes. Yes, because the experienced detective didn't think of that. I will check with the girl from Ryder's case, but all others have rock-stone alibis. I pinch the bridge of my nose with my fingers and rub it, trying to get rid of the headache. Soon enough, this case will be assigned to someone else, since I can't seem to get any leads. And this would be an absolute nightmare for a young, ambitious detective like me. I needed to get at least something to keep me going. I think you need a drink, Jesse says, and I look at him from under my eyebrows. When we're done tonight, we are going out. And, he says quickly, raising his finger to stop me from interrupting. I will not take no for an answer. So here I am now, at the bar, sipping my beer and listening to Jesse vent about the argument with his girlfriend. I politely nod, but only listen to every third word because the focus is escaping me too quickly. I love him like a brother, but help me God with how much he talks. I look around the bar, trying to look casual, but the moment my eyes land on her, there is nothing casual about me. She walks in with her long strawberry blonde hair, gorgeous black dress, and boots heeled so high, I am surprised she isn't falling every second step. But she has this confident aura about her. She has her head held high like she owns this bar, and I am mesmerized. Jesse notices that because he stops talking and nudges me with his elbow. "Go, speak to her," he says with a smirk. "Undust your flirting techniques, wipe the cobwebs, and go." And so I do. I get up, still holding my drink, and sit down next to her at the bar. "Do you mind if I sit next to you?" I ask, and she turns, looking at me with big brown eyes. She smiles. "Of course not." She answers softly. "My name is Polly." "Alex," I say, and shake her hand. "Let me buy you a drink, Polly, if that's okay. Farmhouse dinner." Christina wondered how long she should wait before she reported her husband missing. 2 days seemed too soon, but a week too long. Who would take a whole week to notice their husband missing? She held her hot cocoa in both hands, sipping it slowly as she watched the gentle flakes drifting through the pine trees. The first cold snap of the season had come with several inches of snow, and it covered the ground in a white, soft blanket. She loved being alone in her kitchen, and had spent the morning rearranging her utensils, the pots, and her knives for practical use. Everything had a place, and a place for everything. Christina looked around her small house, the contour of her entire world. She didn't miss him. The house felt lighter, cleaner since he walked out the door that last time. Did she even want him back in her life? She frowned. She had to get back to work. Mick's words rang in her head. "Stop standing, get working." Mick couldn't abide her standing still. Everyone and everything on the farm had to have a use. Mick, of course, accepted. He could sit around and drink, complaining the world had it in for him. She put on Mick's thick flannel jacket, much better than her own, only slightly too large, and checked on the chickens, tossing seeds to them, then the few sheep, all safe in the barn. She looked around at what needed fixing, potential improvements. New opportunities for the old equipment clicked through her mind, adding to the long list. She lifted a bale of hay high to drop in the feed chute. The years of farm labor had made her body strong. Once back inside, she looked in the refrigerator. The meat she had pulled out from the deep freezer had thawed, and so she added spices, putting it in the oven with yellow potatoes and peas. She wiped the clean, pristine counter, then looked around at the sparkling kitchen, frowning at the lingering cigarette smoke smell, still recognizable underneath the pine sol she had dosed the room with. It had been 3 days since Mick had walked out of the door, and that seemed about right. She sat down at the kitchen table in front of the phone on the wall, smoothed her faded blue gingham dress as if they could see her, then called the police. "My husband Mick is missing," she said, surprised at the real tears rolling down her cheek. She did miss Mick, his warm body and his gentle laugh. She missed him like she missed being a little girl when she would wear pretty dresses, dreamt of a prince to marry, and her future loomed bright on the horizon. Except those days were gone, just like Mick. What if they actually found him? She had new dreams now. Coffee, officers, or hot cocoa, maybe. Christina's voice met the officers as they walked into her warm kitchen, a powder of snowflakes on their dark uniform jackets. They introduced themselves as they came in. Detective Sergeant John Maloney. Tall and thick with a jaw like a dump truck, he stomped his feet on the stoop before ducking into the house. Behind him, slight and pretty, with her blonde hair pulled back tight in a bun, Officer Kelly Marks stepped inside. That's quite a road to get here. Lucky we had my 4x4 Bronco. Your little Jap car would have never made it through. D.S. Maloney's voice boomed in the small house, looking over at Officer Marks, who just grimaced at the repeated joke. Thanks. D.S. Maloney took a coffee, and Officer Marks took a hot cocoa with a Gracie has. I speak English. So, you are Christina Santos, and you called about a missing person. A Mickey Mouse, maybe? D.S. Maloney laughed with both thick hands on his hips, his elbows waving, the international flags of asshole. D.S. Maloney snorted at his joke. Both women's eyes stayed on the floor. His name was Mick, Christina said in a low voice. Mick, your husband, has been missing. Officer Marks looked down at a small, pristine notebook. For 3 days. Yes. Christina wiped her eyes with her apron. Mick went out, said he wanted to get something from town, but his truck is still here. Sometimes he goes to a neighbor's house or the bar in town. Oh, I don't know. Christina clenched her apron over and over. Did you look for him or call anyone? D.S. Maloney barked. I don't know who to call. I don't know his friends, other than the men at the Iron Door in town. I called the bar, but he wasn't there. Okay, do you have a description? Officer Marks held her pen at the ready. We can call the local hospitals, other police stations to see if he has turned up. Well, he's a bit taller than me, has dark hair and thicker. She put her arms out, forming a large belly. And his face? Christina squinted one eye closed and turned her face into a deep scowl. Oh. Officer Marks turned away with a frown. Mean mug. Any idea where he could be? D.S. Maloney looked in a cupboard, as if the missing man had been put with the canned peaches instead of the tins of sardines. Maybe he was walking in the forest, chasing a dog or a deer, and he fell and broke his leg. Christina mimed her leg collapsing, hopping, and then, in the snow, she wrapped her arms around herself and shivered. Or a wolf got him. Her strong hands turned into a biting wolf, attacking Officer Marks's arm, who leapt back from the snarling, yapping fingers. But most likely, he'd just run off, tired of me. Christina's chin fell into her chest. D.S. Maloney and Officer Marks caught each other's eyes. I'll check outside. You look around in here. D.S. Maloney leaned into Christina's face. It's okay we look around, right? Nothing to hide. Officer Marks meandered through the house, rubbing her finger on a shelf, and then looking at her dustless glove. She opened a tall door in the kitchen, then her eyes went wide. She pulled a broom out of the closet. What's this? D.S. Maloney walked back in. The new snow covered any possible evidence. I found the meat freezer. You're well stocked for the winter, so that's good. I didn't see much else. Officer Marks held up a well-used broom with dark red coloring on the end of the handle. My broom, Christina offered. Is this blood? D.S. Maloney took the broom, his eyes blazing. Sometimes. Christina's hands squeezed her apron against sharing her secret shame. Mick used that if the kitchen wasn't clean enough. Officer Marks looked around the kitchen with her eyes raised. We're going to test this for blood. You want to change your story? No, you can see. Christina pulled her hair back to show a gash, dried blood still dotting the wound. I cleaned up the rest. She collapsed in a chair. Mick used to be helpful, but we lost so many sheep with the scrapie outbreak. Then with his drinking, I wasn't allowed to leave, just work the farm. Mick wanted me to do so much, but he did nothing but drink and curse and hit. Christina fell into deep sobs, her face in her apron. He just wasn't any use, don't you see? D.S. Maloney looked away, then his nose lifted into the air. Well, that smells good. What is that? Christina looked up. That's dinner. I thawed some meat. I needed to cook it. She stood up and looked in the oven. It's done now. I can't eat it all. I had hoped Mick would come home for dinner, but... Christina pulled a long roast out of the oven, the meat pulling back from the bone. Rosemary and thyme filled the kitchen with the aromas from the well-cooked meat. Do you want some? We can't let anything go to waste on a farm. D.S. Maloney looked at Christina, his eyes narrow, and then smiled. Heck yeah, I'm starving. Sitting at the table, he had a large napkin tucked into his shirt collar, a knife in one hand, a fork in the other. We can't do any more searching now. It is too dark and cold. He belched, loudly. This is real good, by the way. I have an idea. He pointed his fork at Officer Marks. Back at the station, you call around. Hospitals, other police stations. I bet he's in someone's drunk tank sleeping off a bender. Good idea, sir. Officer Marks's eyes swept the ceiling before turning to Christina. I thought this would be lamb, since you have a sheep farm, but it is something different. Christina looked up. Her mouth dropped open before she clenched her teeth. Pig, she muttered. A little tough, but pretty good, I agree. She stood up and went to her refrigerator. I have more. She pulled out several bundles and rolled and taped butcher paper. Here is some ground meat. I can't use it all. You should take it. D.S. Maloney pulled off his napkin as he stood up and took the packages. We'll contact you when we have anything further. He nodded and left the kitchen. Officer Marks jumped up to follow D.S. Maloney outside. Sir, there was obviously a fight in that kitchen. I read a story once about a wife who killed her husband with a frozen lamb chop and then fed it to the officers who came to interview her. Do you think? D.S. Maloney narrowed his eyes at Officer Marks before shaking his head. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard of. There is no body. No, he just left. Not that I blame him. She's not all there. He spun his finger around his ear. Officer Marks stepped back inside. Christina stood at the sink, washing a large meat cleaver. We're going to go. Thanks for the meal. Officer Marks headed for the door, then turned back. You know, I had the craziest idea that you killed your husband with that meat you served us to get rid of the evidence. Christina's mouth dropped open. Oh, that would have been so much easier. Christina shook her head and leaned back into the sink to get to work on the dishes and her new life. The devil is in the details. I was 16 years old when they found the 6 bodies underneath our living room floor. I'm not one to share personal details, mostly because I have a tendency to run my mouth and say too much. But I think about that night often, usually as I'm just crawling into bed, in that time between hazy wakefulness and deep rest, which, if I'm being honest, I've never been the greatest sleeper anyway. I'm at my most productive at night, and as a result, I spend a lot of time staring up at the ceiling, contemplating if it will be the night I spill all the messy details to some reporter that's trying to make it big. But then, I think, the media has already had their fun with my family, and their exuberant reporting, rightly or wrongly, landed my good name in the history books by the time I turned 17. If I were to set the record straight, it would go a little something like this. I can't forget that sound. It's one of the most haunting things about that night, the thing I can't quite shake, and it has followed me my entire life. Thud, 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 thud. There was a hand at our front door, pounding incessantly. It sent shockwaves from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. I broke out in a cold sweat, realizing that the swirl of blue and red lights outside my window, paired with the pounding at the door, meant one thing: the police. My mother, who was notorious for sleeping through just about everything, raced into the hallway. And through the crack of my door, I could see her standing at the top of the stairs, hand to chest. She was wearing her favorite silky pink nightgown, the one that grazed the floor as she walked. She always looked like she was floating when she wore it. But in that moment, it dragged behind her in a fury. Thud, 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 thud. My panic didn't keep my curiosities at bay. I jumped down from my bed and padded toward the door. I peered out, waiting for what came next. My mother's voice was the first to break through the weighted silence. "What is it? What do you want?" she said. Then came a series of sentences that melted together. Talk of my father, where he was. My mother questioning if he got into an accident. Then a firm voice asking who was home. My mother's distress soared another octave. She demanded they call their commanding officer so she could talk to him or her directly. I had never seen her so angry before. I peered over the banister to find the two officers standing on either side of my mother in the entryway. "You have no right," my mother yelled. One of the officers mumbled something to her. Then she called out for me and my younger brother, Rob. I didn't want to descend those stairs. When the police are involved, a bad ending always follows, and I wasn't ready for my bad ending. "It's all right," he said, lifting his palm to us and gesturing to come down to the landing. With my brother under my arm, I took that first step down and stepped right into hell. They ambushed my father when he came home, tackled him as soon as he came through the door. Poor guy didn't even notice the two cop cars parked outside because he had spent the last few hours pounding down gin and tonics. While Robbie was watching TV in the living room, I snuck around the corner, walked down the hallway, and positioned myself outside the kitchen door. For some reason, the police thought the best place to question him was where we ate our food. "Tell me where the bodies are, Jimmy," one of the officers said. "I don't know," my father replied, but his voice betrayed him. He couldn't hide his shakiness. A grumble of incoherent words, then, more clearly, "Do you even have a warrant to be here?" My mother. She had watched one too many Law and Order episodes over the years. "It's a reasonable search, probable cause," said the other officer, his voice much deeper. "Don't need one when you pose an imminent threat to our community. You know me. You know my family," my father said, his voice fumbling on the word family. "For God's sake," my mother yelled. "Don't say another word, James. We need our lawyer here." "Jimmy, we all know the kind of work you do, and considering the circumstances, I can't look the other way just because we're friends." My father was a scientist. That's what I told people who couldn't wrap their head around the industry jargon. But to those who really knew him and his work at the university, he was an expert in forensic and human sciences, criminal forensics, if we are being precise. He spent his days teaching people about chemical compounds, cleaning and evaluating dead bodies, and the proper techniques to preserve evidence. He was a brilliant man and an extraordinary teacher. I would know. I'm his kid, and he taught me everything. But if anyone knew how to get rid of a body, it was him. In the last 12 months, 7 university students had gone missing. 4 of which were directly enrolled in his graduate forensic seminar. The same faces that flashed across the nightly news had been in our home. They spent time on our front porch. They tossed back a beer or wine while discussing local crime scenes. They ate at our dinner table, studied in the hammock hanging between 2 willow trees in our backyard. He was even seen chumming it up with students at happy hours. If it wasn't clear already, my father loved his students, adored them, actually, to the point where he treated them like his own children, even though they weren't. "Did you really think people wouldn't notice, Jimmy?" an officer asked. Everyone noticed, I thought. How could you not? "Tell us," they pleaded. "It's time," they said. "Where are they? We have to bring them home. You don't need to hold this secret anymore, Jimmy." I have to admit that even though it's been 20 years since that night, their certainty in that moment still makes my blood boil. They had such confidence in their accusation, and so little to show in the way of proof. Because, let's be honest, a close relationship with a student is a pretty loose thread when it comes to tying someone to murder. Unfortunately, my father was at his limit for keeping secrets. "They're under the living room floor," he said. At that moment, I fell forward, spilling onto the kitchen floor. I had forgotten just how weak that door was, and I would pay greatly for my curiosity. Because even as I was staring down at the black and white tiles, hoping I was invisible, I could feel the weight of his gaze on me. And when I looked up, our eyes locked. I couldn't breathe, couldn't force my lungs to expand. This was it. This was that moment. The ending that I knew was coming. His eyes told me the only thing I needed to know. The details of that night have been bent and twisted by the media. So many stories, so little accuracy, which is ironic considering the news is supposed to hold itself to the highest level of truth. But I suppose I should give them some grace. They're only human, and humans get things wrong. But I digress. My father never spoke another word. Not at the police station, not in the trial, and definitely not to me. My last moments with my father were spent in observation while the police pulled my childhood home apart, while they dragged 6 bodies out from the depths of our foundation. You know what's funny? The guilt in his eyes turned to shock, and it got me thinking, did he not predict it would turn out this way? Is this not the ending he imagined? My mother leaving his side, our home being torn apart, his daughter's presence as it all went down. Was he worried about the woman I would become if he was found guilty? I had so many questions. One very important one, but I wouldn't get to ask it that night. It didn't take long for a jury to convict him. Only 3 weeks. The fingerprints, clothing fibers, and driver's licenses hiding in our basement were enough to put him in jail for life without parole. And the papers complained it was too easy, that my father was the sloppiest yet most intelligent killer our town had seen. It was as if he wanted to get caught. One journalist said he was, and I quote, "the only educated, well-versed scientist with a knack for murder and childish mistakes. He wouldn't have been able to clean up spilled milk." Let's be clear, my father was no idiot. He was not childish or impulsive. He was kind, warm, and exacting. He was present for everything in my life, showing up to every parent-teacher conference, soccer game, and choir concert. He showed great regard for my interests, encouraging me to try anything and everything, even if it was a bit odd. Like when I said I wanted a taxidermy kit and he bought me one the next day. He was a good father, not a monster. The only thing he was guilty of was spending an increasing amount of time with his students, to a point where he started missing family dinners and school events, then birthdays. But tabloids don't want to hear about the happy shit. They want the darkest parts of a family tragedy. They beg to hear about the warning signs, the late nights, how he protected the specifics of his work, holding the details of his day job like a precious piece of blown glass. They wanted to know about those nights my father caught me in his laboratory, poking around and playing with his chemicals and tools, or the panic in his eyes when he saw me playing in his sacred space, a place I was never allowed to explore on my own. Or they might have been more interested in how he hated when I spent too much time with his students, how I asked so many questions, got too close to young men that were twice my age. Certainly that detail would have popped in the tabloids. But I never gave an interview to the press. Actually, I never spoke to anyone about my childhood, or what was left of it after my mother slipped into a state of catatonic depression and my brother went to live with my uncle. Considering how fast people turned on my father and how much my life had imploded, I figured the best way to stay under the radar was to keep a tight lip. And once I turned 18, I moved to a completely different coast, changed my name, dyed my hair, curated a new life. But a new identity doesn't erase the truth. It can't kill biology or erase the girl that was. His history can't be escaped in cases like this, and my history called to me, over and over again. Even after I got married, had 2 children, and started a new job as a physician's assistant, I still thought about my other life, before I became this woman named Jennifer. After 20 years, I felt that tiny question nagging at me. One flight, and a 35-minute Uber later, I was standing just outside the jail that held the man I once called a father. All of those years without exchanging a single word. I couldn't be sure if he would even agree to see me. But then I remembered the man he was, how much he loved me and adored being a father. I willed myself to move and opened the door. I signed in at the visitor's desk and waited for the guard to come out and say that he would see me. Hours passed without a word, which chipped away at my confidence. But just as I was about to stand up and walk out, the door opened and I was ushered in. The room was small, warm from poor air circulation. It smelt of sweat and metal, with a splash of bleach and Windex. I'm sure my father hated the swirl of incompatible chemicals. I certainly couldn't stand it, but I swallowed my pride and sat in the only metal chair that was available. A few moments later, on the other side of the plexiglass wall, he sauntered in. His gaze was set on the floor, but I could make out the signs of aging on his face. No doubt from stress and time spent around mildewy walls. I leaned forward, picked up the phone. I waited for him to do the same. And when he did, he finally looked at me. So many years, so many memories between us, and one question. "So," I started, "do you want to know where I hid the 7th body? Justice will be served." Sunrise painted the rain-swept rocks of the castle gold as she poured poison into her husband's morning whiskey. The fire of the spirit would mask the ice of the paralytic which had been crippling Lord Blackstone for months. Lady Gemma Blackstone had everything arranged for the death of her husband would be slow, deservedly so. Revenge was a dish best served cold, and Algernon Blackstone liked ice in his whiskey. Gemma watched the chest of her hated husband rise and fall. His crackling breaths came in stutters. The poison had started work on his lungs. She has lessened the dose to ensure he didn't die suddenly. Everyone needed to know was that Lord Blackstone was a sick man. His twisted mind would meet its match in the gnarled agony of his flesh. She smiled sweetly. Best to always smile in case he was looking. Gemma played the part of a doting wife. She fluffed his pillows. She changed the bedpan. She stoked the fire in the night when the servants were gone. "Gemma, is that you?" he rasped, coughing. "It's Algie. What can I get you?" she asked him in the simpering voice he knew her by. "How is it? Do you feel better?" "Maybe," he wheezed. "A solid breakfast will do me the word of good." Gemma nodded and called the butler. "Reginald, Lord Blackstone is awake. Bring the wheelchair." "My whiskey," Lord Blackstone wheezed. "Can't start the day without it." He took the ready crystal tumbler in stiff hands. She had to help him sip it down. "You know you shouldn't, my love. It's your worst vice." "All old men need vices." Lord Blackstone flashed his gold teeth, then closed his eyes in pain as his lungs shot through with agonizing needles of fire. Whiskey burnt away sleep. "Good morning, my lord," said Reginald. The wrinkled butler, older than the stones of the castle, wheeled in a chair that creaked with every turn of the oak wheels. "Good morning, Lady Blackstone." "Good morning, Reginald," she said. Together they helped the gnarled old man into his chair. The butler insisted on pushing him to the dining room. Above the table hung a painting of a hanging family entitled "Justice Will Be Served." Gemma had commissioned the painting to remind her of her mission. Algernon Blackstone had her entire family executed for theft when she was just a girl. Gemma had escaped only because she'd been out on an errand when her mother, father, brother, and sister were sent to the gallows. Only her father had stolen, and only enough food to feed the children. The standard punishment had been the loss of a hand, an acceptable risk for a man who wanted to feed his loved ones. Instead, the Lord of Blackstone Castle had chosen to make an example of the whole Fisher family. High on her stool on the gallows, Gemma's mother had caught her eye. Before her footing was kicked away from her, Angela Fisher mouthed the words, "Live, live for us." Tears in Angela's eyes were the last things Gemma saw before the rope snapped, taut, and the quartet of condemned began kicking. Faces twisted in horror. The painted faces looked little like her family, but the painter had captured the terror of the doomed. Gemma was grateful that the likeness of the painting was off. There was no chance anyone would connect her and her blue eyes to the brown-eyed quartet kicking above the banquet table. Justice will be served, Gemma promised herself as she did whenever she ate. Revenge had hardened her, but it was slow. Years of practicing her accent, her manners, which utensils to use, had honed her for the mission. A lord with a grudge against Algernon Blackstone had presented her to the widower as a cousin. Lecherous Lord Blackstone hadn't wasted a week before wedding himself to the teenaged Gemma. "The cook will be finished with breakfast shortly. Can I cut you some bread and spread it for you?" Reginald asked. The 80-year-old butler's perfect posture contrasted the bent back of Lord Blackstone. "Yes, please," Gemma nodded. Fresh bread, hot from the oven, steamed as the bread knife sawed through it. The wedge-shaped slice belied distraction as the butler watched the dining room door expectantly. Normally, his every cut was perfect. "Something on your mind, Reginald?" Algernon Blackstone asked, raising a graying eyebrow. "Just an anniversary of sorts, Lord Blackstone." Glowing life Gemma had never seen sparkled in Reginald's red-veined eyes. His smile unnerved her. Watching the door, she gripped a butter knife with white knuckles. "What are you up to?" The ancient doors whined on hinges that needed to be oiled as the cook entered with a covered tray. Walking down the table, Camilla set the tray down at the end. The silver dome revealed 2 matchlock pistols. Both were loaded and ready to fire. "Reginald? Camilla? What is this?" Lord Blackstone's voice was outraged. He tried to stand, shaking, but broke into a fit of coughing. The butler and cook began laughing. Camilla took both pistols, handed one to Reginald, and aimed hers at Gemma. "Do you remember the girl you had drowned for spilling soup in your lap?" asked Camilla. She waited for recognition in the Lord's eyes. "You don't, do you?" Victory morphed into outrage on the cook's face. "Was my daughter's life so forgettable to you?" "I don't," Lord Algernon began. "Soup!" Reginald yelled. "Spilled soup!" He leveled his pistol at Lord Blackstone. "You could have beaten her. You could have locked her in the stocks. You could have simply fired her. No, you killed her. Our beautiful girl drowned over fucking soup." Reginald's forever gray face was red. Veins throbbed in his forehead. "She was your daughter?" Algernon asked, looking from the butler to the cook to Lady Blackstone. "Our only daughter," Camilla nodded. "Who you killed 20 years ago today." 20 years? Gemma asked, unable to stop herself. "You waited 20 years? He killed my family 7 years ago, and I was nearly done with him." Camilla's gun aimed at her heart as she pointed at the painting above the table. "You commissioned that painting yourself," Reginald said. He waved his free hand at Justice Will Be Served, to remind me of the mother, father, sister, and brother he had hanged. Palms raised, Gemma pushed herself out of the gilded chair she'd been sitting in 3 times a day for years. "Your maiden name was Sinclair," Camilla snarled. "I was here when Lord William Sinclair delivered you to Lord Blackstone." With every word, Gemma saw the old woman working herself up to shooting Gemma. To him, she was as guilty as Lord Blackstone. He hated Algernon. I told Lord Sinclair my marriage to Lord Blackstone would be his downfall. William was only too happy to help. "I'll have you all hanged," said Lord Blackstone. He slammed a gnarled fist into the table and winced. Convulsing, he clutched at his chest. "You'll never hurt anyone again," Gemma told him. "I've been seeing to that for months." She turned to Reginald. "I've been poisoning his morning whiskey." "What?" said Lord Blackstone, the butler and the cook as one. "It's no coincidence he can barely move," said Gemma, looking from Reginald to Camilla. "It's the poison." "You told me you believed in justice," wheezed Algernon Blackstone. "I do," said Gemma, her face releasing all of the anger she'd held in for years. "Justice for my mother Angela, for my father David, for my sister Alice, for my brother Darren, all murdered so that you could make a point." She prodded his chest. His hand moved to catch her finger at a snail's pace. "There's poison in my Janelle No. 5 perfume. I've been adding a drop to your whiskey since I bought the rat killer from a farmer at last year's summer fair." "He stole from me. I had to set an example," said Lord Blackstone of her father. "Do you know how many one-handed thieves there were walking about in the town, making a mockery of justice, of the law?" He looked at the painting, unrepentant. He gathered his resolve. "Then you should have whipped him, locked him in the stocks, banished him." Gemma's voice was colder than the iron bars on Blackstone Castle's windows in midwinter. "I have a responsibility to uphold the law of the land. A liar like you could never understand. Lords maintain order, otherwise there would be chaos." He caught his wife's eye, imploring. "It was nothing personal, Gemma. I didn't know you." "That's the problem, Algernon. It's never personal. Life means nothing to you. Their daughter meant nothing to you. Lady Blackstone waved a hand at the butler and the cook. It's personal for us and everyone who's had their life destroyed by your twisted vision of justice. You're serious, aren't you? Reginald asked. Camilla, take the gun. I have to know. He handed his pistol to the woman who had prepared every meal Algernon had eaten for 20 years. His coattails flicked as he flitted through the dining hall door. His footsteps retreated, clattering along the flagstones. Gemma, said Lord Blackstone. Desperation was writ large in his bulging eyes. You've been my wife for 5 wonderful years. I've loved you with all my heart. I've had the hard task of keeping the peace in these parts, but I've never meant you harm. Gemma, I love you. Please don't do this. He pressed his palms together. In the name of God, spare me. God? Gemma scoffed. Love? She slapped the table, giving Algernon and Camilla a fright. You would have hung me with the rest of my family if I hadn't been checking the family crab traps. I returned to find my entire family on the gallows on your order. I watched them hang because you had decreed it. Tears of anger ran through her powder makeup. God may have said, "Thou shalt not steal," but I'm sure he gave precedence to "Thou shalt not kill." You have a lot of blood on your hands, Lord Blackstone. At his title, Gemma turned on the stately accent which had been slipping as she told her story. Don't think I trust you, said the cook to Lady Blackstone. I've watched you playing the doting wife for years. I've seen you fawning over this monster. I've heard you praise his firm hand for the law. The gray hair of the old woman was slick with sweat that beaded on her forehead. That's all it was, Camilla. An act. You must have known my mother Angela, and me. My name is Jenny Fisher. I lived in Blackstone until the day he hung my family. I ran to Winshore to escape. I learned to copy Lord Sinclair, working in his kitchen. I learned the way the gardener poisoned foxes and rats. I formed a plan. I convinced Lord Sinclair to pass me off as his own to spite Lord Blackstone. Jenny Fisher took a deep breath before her next admission. Then I killed Lord Sinclair. What? Algernon turned to look at her. A murderess in my bed all these years. I was in good company as far as that goes, Jenny said coldly, the lesser of two evils. Lord Sinclair was no saint himself. She chewed her nail as the sound of Reginald's perfectly shined shoes returned. I don't know what's in this bottle, said the butter, holding up the exquisite green glass. But it's not perfume. It's certainly not Janelle number 5. None of it touched you, did it? Jenny asked. A drop is dangerous. 3 is death. She's telling the truth? Camilla asked. The gun aimed at Lady Blackstone lowered from Jenny's heart to her stomach. This is too much. Lord Blackstone has no shortage of enemies. That's no secret. Reginald took a gun from his wife and sat heavily 5 seats down from the lord and lady of the castle. How can we know for sure she's telling the truth? Camilla asked. We've waited all these years. I'm not letting revenge slip away after all that time. I want to see the light leave his eyes. I want to watch his soul leave this husk on the way to hell. Camilla, please. Algernon's lip quivered. You shut your murderous mouth, Lord Blackstone. I want nothing but death from you. Camilla stretched her arm from point blank until the barrel was 1 chair from the wretch who'd brought them all together. Let me do what I was planning to do. Jenny tilted her head as her mother had when she'd haggled with Sellers. He drinks from that bottle as much as he likes. We can all watch justice be done. That way you'll know. Gemma! Algernon Blackstone tried to stand and coughed up mucus and blood for his futile efforts. My name is Jenny Fisher. Always was, always will be. daughter of Angela and David, sister to Alice and Darren. I want you to know that as you die. Her dress, green silk and cotton, fluffed her out to twice the size as she stood by his side. We have glasses. Let me serve him. Number, I'm not drinking anything you give me, Lord Blackstone said with steel in his voice. Then let them shoot you. I'm sure that hurts more, said Jenny with a cruel smile. Whether you die isn't up for debate, husband. Your choice now is how you want to go. Reaching across the long table, she took an empty glass and opened her hand, waiting for the green bottle in Reginald's grip. When he handed her the former perfume container, she poured a shot of it into the waiting glass and handed it to Lord Blackstone. Silence took a seat beside them at the table and waited patiently. Harsh winds from across the sea could scarcely be heard over the sound of the host's labored breathing. Algernon Blackstone stared at the clear liquid in the glass, pure as water. His hand trembled. I can't smell it, said the Lord of Blackstone Castle. That was the point, husband. The woman he'd known as Gemma for years watched him expectantly. This or a gun wound? He asked, raising the glass of death. You could jump from the battlements onto the rocks if you like, said Camilla. I've dreamed of pushing you off them for years. Justice will be served, said Lord Algernon. His shoulders sank. Is it too late to say that I'm sorry? He looked from one executioner to another. No, said Reginald. But it's far too late for an apology to get you out of this. Algernon coughed. Closing his eyes, he nodded. Well, I'm sorry anyway. I tried to see the world in black and white. It was easier that way. He swirled his doom in the glass. It tasted fine in whiskey. If I'm to go, can it be in bed? One last sleep? What do you think? Reginald asked Camilla. As long as it's done. The cook nodded. Back to bed then, Lord Blackstone. The butler took the glass from Algernon's shaking hands, gave it to his wife, then wheeled his master away. Jenny walked behind Reginald with Camilla's gun aimed at her back. The butler helped the lord into his four-poster bed. Jenny filled the rest of the glass with amber alcohol and handed it to her husband. Looks delicious, said Lord Blackstone. He gave them all a vicious smile. I forgive you for murdering me. Hopefully you can all find peace together, knowing what you did, what you are. Laughing through a cough, he drank down his whiskey. Trying to divide us with your last words? Jenny sat by Lord Algernon's side. How you? Just remember my family as you die. She took his hand, already immobile. And our daughter, said Camilla. He can't talk, said Jenny. He's not breathing. This is the end. She looked into Algernon's bulging eyes. Justice is served. Lord Blackstone's chest stopped moving. He twitched weakly, then ceased. Is he dead? Reginald asked. Number not yet, but it is inevitable now. Jenny closed the liver-spotted eyelids of her husband. His skin was cold. Her fingers on his neck felt the beat of his heart slowing to a stop. It's done. I thought I would feel something. Camilla looked at Reginald. I thought I would feel some peace at last. What now? Reginald asked. Breakfast? Lady Blackstone suggested. The day had not gone as planned. She had 2 loose ends to tie off and always planned better on a full stomach. Killer ratings. The stealth drone hovered over the backyard of the suburban house, its camera zooming in close to its subject. A boy, kneeling on the lawn, in one hand a praying mantis, the other a pair of tweezers. Holding the insect close to his expressionless face, He slowly ripped the legs off the mantis. Then once that task was completed, immersed the body in a jar of water that lay on the grass in front of him until the insect stopped struggling and was still. A thin smile played across the boy's face. "Hey, Dave," Richie called out across the bustling studio of Hitchcock Media Enterprises. "Come take a look at this. Think we have a future winner here." Dave looked up from his editing station and walked over to the Richie's terminal, where the balding heavyset man was reviewing the drone footage. "Check this." Richie clicked the play button. "I reckon we got ourselves a classic Type C." Dave watched the replay and nodded. "Yep, definitely Type C. He will be moving on to small animals next, I bet." Dave grabbed a chair and sat down. "What backstory have you got on him so far?" Richie pulled up a file onto the terminal screen. "Let's see. We got a 14-year-old kid, only child, with single-parent mother. Never knew his father." He scrolled down. "Mother is a Christian fundamentalist. Breastfed the kid until he was 2 years old." Narrowed his eyes. "Oh, and get this. She would hop into the bath with him every night and sponge him clean up until he was 10 when he started getting erections." Dave barked a short laugh. "Jesus, where do these people come from?" He leant back in the chair. In the future, people would look back on this time as the era of surveillance, where nothing could be hidden unless you were the rich elite. Still, it made their job a hell of a lot easier, which was to make a shitload of money off human misery. Dave liked to think they were performing a necessary evil, like a safety valve on the pressure cooker that was modern society. That made what he did a little easier, and although he still might not sleep well at night, he did sleep in a large mansion in a secure community next to a cosmetically perfect wife. Richie was talking again. Dave focused his attention on the screen. "I've run the algorithms, and the AI is coming up with a 93% chance of activation by the age of 25. "Those are good odds," said Dave, rubbing his chin. "Put a flag on his file, and we'll check back in a few years." Dave stood up and clapped the other man on the shoulder. "The fans are gonna love this one. Richie, good job as always." Richie grinned. "Thanks, Chief." Dave returned to his desk, where he was currently editing the latest true crime documentary, to be released later that month. This one was a typical Type B case, a nurse who had been stealthily killing cancer patients by injecting air into their IV drips. A pretty mundane, angel of death scenario, but HME had gotten onto her pretty quick, so the broadcasting and publishing rights hadn't cost an arm and a leg. Dave didn't think ratings would be that great, but they had managed to get some decent footage from the hospital and the journal the nurse had written, so it would be worth syndicating to make a bit more profit. HME's documentaries were some of the highest rating reality shows on Downstream, and let's face it, that's all that existed on mass social media these days. But things had been a little lean of late, and they needed a big, high-profile case. Dave considered Richie's latest find. Type C cases were always male, of low to average intelligence, with suppressed trauma from childhood caused by a family member, and would exhibit acts of violence around the onset of adolescence. The victims were usually female and involved sexual violence or torture before death. We need another Ted Bundy or Richard Ramirez, Dave thought. They don't make them like they used to. Dave chuckled. Imagine if we could have got those guys to sign. We would be drowning in royalties. Still shaking his head in amusement, he wandered over to the publicity department. A tall, angular-looking woman, poring over some glossy printouts at her desk, looked up at his approach. "Hey, Dave. How can I help you?" "Hey, Jenny. Just wondering if Anthony is around." Jenny pursed her lips. "He was on sick leave, I think." She checked the screen in front of her. He was supposed to be back a few days ago, but I haven't seen him. Maybe he needed some more time off. Okay. I guess it's hard to find good help these days, eh? Jenny laughed politely. Dave leaned against the desk. Look, maybe you can help me. I'm trying to come up with a catchphrase for the latest doco, but I'm stumped. Jenny furrowed her brow in concentration. That's the nurse one, right? Dave nodded. And she was an elderly type as well. Her eyes lit up, and she clicked her fingers. How about the matron of mercy? Dave contemplated the idea. You know, that's great. He gave Jenny a thumbs up. It'll play well, considering all the victims were terminal patients anyway. Make for some nice, wholesome family viewing. Jenny gave an absent-minded smile as she returned to her work. Dave was just finishing off the credits for the nurse documentary when one of the interns came rushing over, flustered and red-faced. Sir, I think we have something big, the young man said breathlessly. Maybe even a possible type A. Dave pointed. Juan, isn't it? He prided himself on knowing all the names of his staff, even down to the gophers. Look, calm down. Take a seat and tell me what you've got. The intern sat down and held out a tablet. We just received some info from one of our talent scouts out in San Francisco. Female, body count of 2, high likelihood of type A. Dave glanced at the picture. Pretty blonde, with freckles and all, a real girl-next-door beauty. He felt a thrill of exhilaration run through him. A type A was the rarest of the rare, a serial murderer who was charismatic, highly intelligent, and usually politically or ideologically motivated. They were also the most difficult ones to get to sign on the dotted line. Okay, I'm gonna need more details here. Juan read from the screen in his hand. Gordon Calloway, the third CEO of the hedge fund Armada Londi, was found strangled to death in his penthouse suite at the Regency in LA 6 days ago. Our surveillance picked up this woman leaving the room soon after the time of death. Then she just seemed to disappear. The young man licked his lips. Then 2 days ago, a male body was found in a 4th-floor room of the Fairmont in San Francisco. His skin had been totally removed by a surgical device, most likely a scalpel. As a result, the deceased is yet to be identified. He paused and looked at Dave. The same woman was again detected by our surveillance leaving the scene. Dave raised his eyebrows. 2 different methods of killing. Now that was unusual, even for a type A. This was getting better and better. Now, you are going to love this. The intern smiled. We have ID on the suspect. Her name is Samantha Bronte, 21 years old and currently studying a master's degree in criminology and comp science at New York University. Dave opened his mouth to speak, but Juan held up his hand. And this is the clincher. Her parents were the last victims of one Simon Peters. Dave felt his jaw drop. Simon Peters, aka the Cuckold Strangler. His doco from 4 years ago was one of the highest rating of all time. Jesus Christ, this is insane. Hey, Richie, he yelled out. Get over here pronto. What is it? Richie asked, eyes gleaming. He could tell when something good was going on. Simon Peters, give us a recap. Okay. So his MO was prowling the motor inns of West Florida, where he would stalk and choose his victims, always middle-class couples. Richie scratched his cheek thoughtfully. He would break into their room early in the morning, tie the couple up at gunpoint, rape and strangle the woman in front of her partner, then slit the guy's throat with a hunting knife. He did us a big favor as well by recording the last 2 murders with his phone. Richie looked down at his hands. Of course, we couldn't use such explicit footage for our feature, but somehow, he winked at Dave, Somehow the footage made its way to the dark web, and the notoriety of that boosted our ratings tenfold. Dave let out a breath. There must be some connection here, but that's not important right now. We need to track this Samantha down, and fast. Dave and Richie exchanged knowing looks. "This is big," Dave said. "Possibly the biggest thing we've ever seen." A notification pinged on Juan's tablet, and he gasped out loud. "What is it?" Dave queried sharply. The intern looked up. "We have just detected the suspect arriving at North Vegas Airport, and from her credit card records, she has booked a room at the MGM Grande for tonight." Dave felt the hairs on his arms stand up. "All right, I'm going to take care of this one personally. We can't afford to lose this. Gonna pack an overnight bag and take our private Gulfstream to Vegas ASAP. Should be there in under 2 hours." He pointed at Richie. "Organize a car for me and alert everyone that it's all hands on deck." Richie nodded briskly. "Will do. And good luck, Dave." Dave arrived at the MGM in the early evening, the desert sunset casting an eerie blood like haze across the dusty parking lot. The hotel lobby was relatively quiet, a few tourist groups checking in, and a scattering of people at the bar. He looked down at the picture on his phone and scanned the area. Nope, not here. Dave fought down a wave of frustration. "Okay, gotta stay calm." He glanced at the bar. "I'll grab a drink and wait." He ordered a beer, and the gorgeous raven-haired woman next to him gave him a tentative smile. He nodded briskly. "Any other time I'd be interested, but it's all business right now, sweetie." He took his drink and sat down at a table, which commanded a view of the lobby entrance and the elevators leading to the suites. This was the crucial moment, the first contact. He found most of the time the killer was flattered, both by the money offered and the chance at infamous immortality. Their name remembered long after the victims had been forgotten. Most of the time. His phone started ringing. "Hello?" It was Richie. "Dave, we got a problem. We've checked the hotel camera and there is no sign of our target, coming or going. Looks like we got scammed." Dave sighed bitterly. "Damn it, well, she must be in Vegas somewhere." He looked out the entrance. It was dark now, with the first stars appearing in the velvet night. "Look, I'm gonna stay here for a while. Keep your eyes and ears open and let me know if anything develops." "Roger that," Richie replied. Dave sighed again. Might as well get another beer. The dark-haired lady was still at the bar, a few whiskeys in by the looks of the glasses in front of her. She looked at him from under lowered eyelids. "I was watching you. Looks like you've been stood up." Dave flashed a wry grin. "Yeah, you could say that." A faint smile. "Me too. I don't think my date is turning up." She gave him a sultry glance. "Look, I have a room here and a bottle of sparkling on ice waiting for me. Want to come up and have a nightcap?" Dave chuckled. "Still got it." "Sure, why not? Maybe we can salvage something out of this shitty situation." Her room was on the 12th floor with an impressive view of the Strip. As she was closing the door behind them, Dave asked, "Hey, I didn't catch your name?" "Oh, how rude of me. It's Samantha," she replied breathily, just as he felt a sharp pinprick, and then everything went black. He awoke groggily, unable to move. After a quick assessment, he realized that was because his hands and feet were restrained with zip ties, and he was lying on a bed with duct tape holding him down. "Awake now, my little Dave?" The woman was standing beside the bed, gently caressing his arm. He shivered with a frisson of fear. "You're Samantha Bronte?" he demanded with wide eyes. And how do you know my name? Samantha smiled sardonically. Oh, I know everything about you. She sat down on the edge of the bed. You fell into my trap like such a good little boy. But how? Dave stammered. You'd be surprised at what you can do with a degree in computer science. She continued stroking him with her fingernails, especially when you have HME's login details from a loyal employee. She took something from the bedside table and plopped it onto his chest with a sickening squelch. I don't think your buddy Anthony is going to be coming back to work anytime soon. He gazed at the reddish-colored object with growing horror. Holy shit, it was his skin. It was Anthony's skin. Samantha dug her nails into his arm viciously. Dave cried out in pain. Do you know what it's like to lose your parents in the most hideous way, and then to have their violation watched again and again by your millions of depraved fans? Dave gasped. Look, honey, we don't make these killers. We just make them famous. If not us, then someone else would. I'm not so sure. Samantha's voice dripped pure venom. But you're going to find out, all of you, what a really dedicated serial killer can do. She took something from under the bed. You and your puerile nicknames. It's only poetic justice to return the favor. Do you recall one of your first documentaries? Samantha stood up. I believe it was called The Boston Bludgeoner. The rusty sledgehammer was the last thing Dave saw. Resolute. Buy the shoes. It's okay. Screw the budget. That's not this year's resolution. You deserve this. When the saleswoman asks you if you've done much running, laugh and gesture to your midsection. The woman will blink, force out a half-baked ha. It's a reaction of discomfort, not cruelty. You made it weird. You don't know why you feel the need to shame your own body in front of a stranger, but you blame it on her Lululemon leggings and air hostess smile. She makes you nervous. Most people do. When you go outside, sit next to a man on a bus bench. He's reading a book, and you recognize the cover from an English course in college. A man's body, clad in red, knight-like armor, with a white mask where his head should be. The mask is smiling and handsome on one side, twisted and snarling on the other, with a hollow void where his eyes should be. The Mysterious Stranger, by Mark Twain. Good taste. When you sit, notice how the man's eyes dash over in your direction. It's almost imperceptible, and no other part of him moves an inch. Convince yourself that the chill trickling down your spine is a sign of an early winter wind. The sweat beneath your arm says differently. Change into your new shoes right there on the bench. They're tight, but almost comforting, reminding you of the cattle squeeze chutes on the farm you grew up on. Your new shoes are white, because white seemed luxurious and fresh and symbolic. New beginnings, clean slate. Now, curse and rub your own spit into a dirt smudge on the side. Remember that white is rarely ever white at all. Think of the stains spreading like mold along shower walls. When the bus arrives, sit near the front. You'll only take it half the way home today and walk the rest. New year, new you. The man with the book sits at the back of the bus. This is your bus stop in a residential area you don't know well. Apparently, it's his bus stop too. Start walking. Notice he is walking too. This shouldn't make you nervous. You always see the worst in people. What is wrong with you? Therapy should have been one of your resolutions. It's been 15 minutes. You're almost home, but you don't want him to know where you live. So you walk past the turn to your street and feel your heart drop to your toes. You can smell the fishy stench of your own stress sweat leaking through your corduroy jacket. 20 minutes. almost out of the residential area. In a couple blocks, you'll be on Commercial Drive, where you can enter a cafe or a bar and have a panic attack in a graffitied bathroom stall until the perceived threat is gone. It wouldn't be the first time. When construction blocks access to the street crossing you meant to take, you'll have to find a detour. Luckily, there's an alley to your left, a shortcut to safety if anything. You just need to move fast. Good thing you bought those shoes. When you hear the man's footsteps beating at your heels, run. 2. Eat healthier. Start your day off right with his bento box leftovers. He ate all the shrimp from the noodles and the sushi on the side, but saved you the edamame. That's all right. You didn't need those extra calories anyway. Don't make all that running and fighting from yesterday for nothing. Take a bite. You're not hungry, but you don't know when the next time you'll see food again will be. The noodles are cold, and they slide down your throat like earthworms. Don't complain about the temperature. Your mom always told you microwaves were evil anyway. You crouch over the food on a cold concrete floor. You've stopped crying long enough to take in your surroundings. You are confined to a small circumference around your bed, with a chain clamped around your ankle, the other end of it welded to a rusty metal pole coming out of the ground. The chain rattles with each move you make. Your bed is in the center of a room, bits of foam scattered around it from mice chewing the mattress. Next to it is a bucket, where eventually you will have to relieve yourself, though you'll hold it in until it hurts. There are no windows down here, and it smells like an old boyfriend's basement, a combination of mildew and old socks. Air so thick, you feel as if you could cut into it with a knife. The corners of the room are dark but packed with things. Boxes stacked haphazardly, shelves overflowing with old books, loose papers on the ground. You can't make out what any of the books say on the spine, as much as you try to strain your eyes. So much for that clue. When he tells you to eat, you eat. Whatever he wants with you, he doesn't want you dead. Yet, take comfort in this. Hide the fork from your meal under your mattress. 3. Learn a new skill or hobby. It takes an average of 6 seconds to walk in a circle at the length of your chain. 3 seconds if you run. Count the moths that flicker around the buzzing light bulb above you. Count particles of dust in the air. Numbers were never your thing before. You were an English major once, though that life feels light years away. Divide experiences between before and after. Before, you had a cat. He had a scratchy meow and sprayed on your laundry, but slept in the crook of your arm every night. Before, you had a crush on your coworker Diane, even though she talked with her mouth open, and you caught her stealing from the baking display 3 times. After, you are shitting in a bucket. You curl up on your mattress, thin blanket pulled over your head, and cry. Try making an itemized list in your head of every kiss you've ever had. See if you can remember the script from the 1998 fantasy movie Willow. You almost can. For some reason, this makes you cry too. Go back to counting. The mice stayed hidden for the first couple days, but they're getting bolder. Keep track of every time one skitters over your hand or foot. Of all the horrors you could imagine a kidnapping victim to go through, boredom certainly was not one of them. On what you think could be the 8th day, try something different. You know the man only enters the basement twice. First, to take your used bucket, then to bring back a clean bucket and food. You have been so busy cowering in the farthest end of your chain away from him that you haven't gotten the chance to really observe. Pay attention this time. Start counting when he first unlocks the door. He keeps his eyes on the ground as descends the stairs and approaches to pick up your bucket. It doesn't look like guilt or nerves, but rather, he does not seem to regard you at all. as if you are so far beneath him that your presence can hardly be perceived. You almost lose track of your counting, mind reeling. Why are you here at all when he acts as if he wants nothing to do with you? He is as nondescript a man as they come. Brown hair, dark eyes, with short, well-kept facial hair, thin-rimmed glasses, a button-down blue shirt, recently ironed, gray trousers, clean shoes. If you ever get out of this, you're not convinced you could pick him out in a police lineup. When he leaves, he shuts the door behind him, but does not lock it. These seconds are crucial. Above you, at one end of room, you can hear a toilet flush, running into pipes that go through the basement. More water running after that. Then there are footsteps to the other side of the house. He is there for a short time. Finally, the footsteps lead back to the basement door. He has returned with a freshly cleaned bucket in one hand and a tinfoil wrapped burrito in the other. He sets them both down beside you, wordlessly, and then he is gone again. The door is latched tight behind him. 4 minutes and 38 seconds. That's how long the door was unlocked for. Don't forget this. 4. Be more adventurous. Something is different today. Another moth hits the burning light bulb and falls dead into your matted hair. The mice, your only companions, have gone quiet. Upstairs, there is more movement than usual, things being dragged along the floor. Your stomach has been flip-flopping since you woke up. Call it intuition. There is the issue of that pesky iron shackle around your ankle. You made a valiant effort by nibbling off your toenails and using them as lockpicks, but they were too soft and bendable. You thought about breaking your ankle, but your heel would still be in the way. So now, you turn to the other end of your restraints, the metal rod coming out of the basement floor. At its base, it flares out into a square plate with large iron screws holding it down into the cement. The pole is speckled with a dusty red rust that follow down the first couple links in the chain. A memory flashes in your mind of you as a young girl, loose braids and dirt smudged over your summer freckles. Your dad had an old Chevy parked on the edge of the horse's pasture, weeds growing through the windows. You tried, with all the strength in your little arms, to open the door, but the handle snapped right off and sent you flailing backwards. It left red on your hand, and you thought the car was bleeding. There could be hope after all. You take your shoes from where they've sat dutifully by the bed and put them on. Pull the chain taut and kick near the base where there is the most rust. Kick again and again. The rust stains the white of your shoes. Take a break to wipe frustrated tears from your eyes, then try something different. Pull the chain towards you, taut again. Push your feet against the chain. Harder. Your legs begin to shake, and the chain bites into the flesh of your palms. Grit your teeth. Keep pushing. It bursts. You gasp, collapse to the floor, and weep. It's refreshing to cry from joy for a change. When the man comes to change your bucket, sit in front of the pole. Don't let him see you've escaped your shackles. The man raises his eyes to meet yours, and you can suddenly feel every single hair on your body. This is the first time he's looked at you since you were taken. It doesn't last more than a second, but you are shaking. He heads up the basement stairs, bucket in hand. Shake off the chills. Let them roll down your spine and out of your system. It's now or never. With clammy hands, pick up your broken chain and cradle it to your belly. Quiet. You can feel your heat thumping against your rib cage, and you breathe hard through your nose. Leave your shoes behind. Too loud. When you get to the stairs, pretend you are a feather flitting weightlessly above the steps. Place your ear to the door. Try to hear past the pulsing of your own veins. The water is running. Open the door. 5. Read more books. When you wake up, all you see is a bright light ahead, and with some relief, ask yourself if you are finally dead. It takes a few bleary blinks for your surroundings to come back into focus. The light at the end of a tunnel becomes no more than a light bulb, flickered by the fluttering of wings. You are back in the basement. Sit up. Careful, not too fast. Your head rushes, and dots speckle your vision. You bring a hand to your head to steady it, but when you bring it down, your hand comes back sticky with red. You feel around with your hand some more, find that your hair is matted and clings to your forehead. Beneath the hair is the source of blood. It doesn't seem to be actively bleeding much, and what is there has already coagulated. Beneath where your head was laying, the mattress is soaked with your blood. You shuffle backwards away from it as your breathing grows erratic and shallow. Try to wipe your red hand off on your jeans. The blood is already caking under your fingernails. On unsteady legs, you manage to stand up. You realize that although you are back in the basement, your chain is still broken. Look frantically around the room for a weapon, or another escape you somehow missed before, until your eyes land upon the boxes and shelves. Maybe something in there could help. You hobble over to it, dragging your chain behind you, and throw open the first box you reach. It's only paper, and as you rummage, you leave red smudges and fingerprints all over them. You aren't paying attention to the words, but an image catches your eye. You stop, pull out the paper. It's a diagram of sorts, with labels and instructions in a language you can't understand. But what you do understand is that this diagram looks awfully like a pentagram. You pull out more papers, pay closer attention. Drawings of cloaked figures, goat heads, numbers and lists written in Latin and other old tongues. Box after box, they're all the same. You turn to the bookshelf, flipping open dusty tomes to more diagrams of demons. You toss the books on the floor, and they land with a satisfying thud. You blink back the dots forming in your eyes and steady yourself. Above you, footsteps are approaching the basement door. You lay back down on the mattress and pretend to be unconscious, right where he left you. 7. Appreciate the little things. You peek through your eyelashes. He is painting a pentagram in white on the floor. Beside him is an assortment of strange objects: wax drip candles, fragments of leg bones, a skull, raven feathers in a jar, glass vials of liquids and powders, glistening gemstones. It's almost comical, the most generic, vague Satanism you could imagine. A half-frantic giggle bubbles in your chest, tugging at the corners of your mouth. Bite your tongue to keep it down. His hands clamp down on your ankles and tug. He is dragging you off the bed to the floor just beside it where he's painted the pentagram. You hear the clinking of glass, the rattle of bones, as each object is arranged around your body. Then you can hear his breath above you. Feel his knees at the sides of your legs. He begins to chant. You risk a peek through small slits in your eyelid and see him kneeling over you, book in one hand and a knife in the other. You kick him in the stomach. He gasps and reels back, dropping both the knife and the book. But before you can scramble away, he is on you again, pinning your wrists to the ground. You can feel his hot breath on your face, spit flying out of his heaving mouth. He curses at you and tells you to stay down. Your fingertips brush the edge of the mattress beside you. Remember what you kept from the first day you woke up in this shithole. The fork. 6. Set healthy boundaries with the people in your life. You feel around for the metal, find its handle, grip it hard, then spit in the man's eyes. He loosens his grip on your wrists for just long enough. With utensil in hand, you thrust your arm up until it meets with his neck. The prongs sink into his flesh, as is he, were nothing more than a dense cheesecake. Now, he looks you in the eyes, and you do not cower. You hold there for a moment, driving the fork deeper in, just in case. When you let go, he takes a moment to react. Then his eyes widen, still locked with your own, and he stumbles backwards off of your body. His hand fumbles for the fork. There is blood trickling down onto his freshly ironed shirt. With a shaking hand, he pulls the utensil from his flesh, causing the blood to rush to escape the open wound in thick spurts. He holds a hand tight to his throat, trying to slow the loss, gasping and sputtering. He turns and runs to escape the basement. Get up. Follow him. As he fumbles with the lock on the door, you grab the back of his shirt and pull. In his shock, he loses balance and drops his key on the step beneath the door. He tries to grab onto you as he falls backwards, but you step quickly to the side and cling to the stair railing. Watch as he tumbles down the stairs, landing hard on the concrete below. He struggles to get back up, only making it to his knees as his movements grow more sluggish. You can hear him gargle on his own blood. He clambers towards the stairs again. Pick up the key. Your heart flutters at the click of the door unlocking. Open it. Ahead of you is a hallway, at the end of which is your exit to safety. Don't look back at the man groveling at your heels. Step out, shut the door behind you, and lock it tight. The Breakfast Murder Club. A hush fell upon the gathering at the large clover-shaped mansion that Lucky the Lucky Charms leprechaun lived in. The guests looked in horror and sadness as they saw the body of the effusive leprechaun floating in the large clover-shaped pool that was located in the courtyard of the luxurious estate. Tony the Tiger, Toucan Sam, Count Chocula, Frankenberry, Buzz the Honey Nut Cheerios Bee, and Snap, Crackle, and Pop all stood silently staring at the corpse. While their first impulse was to consider it an accidental death by drowning, something about the mangled nature of the body didn't add up. Casting even further doubt on the death by drowning theory was the large metal blade protruding from Lucky's back, with blood flowing freely out of the wound and into the pool water. After a long and agonizing silence, Buzz was the first to speak. "Looks like we got ourselves a serial killer on our hands," he giggled. "Buzz, that's not fucking funny," Crackle yelled at the floating bee. "We have to figure out who did this." "Can we make sure he's really dead?" Snap inquired. "I mean, we don't know for sure, do we?" "I don't think he's alive." Toucan Sam flew over the pool to examine the corpse from above. "He's not breathing." He flew back to his room and retrieved a large life preserver shaped like a red Fruit Loop, then tossed it into the pool next to Lucky. But there was no movement from the leprechaun. "Come on, Lucky." The body still did not stir. "He's dead," Tony lamented. "But who would want to kill Lucky?" Count Chocula asked. "Lucky didn't have an enemy in the world." "Well, that's not totally true." Pop shook his head. "I can think of a few people who would have wanted to do away with Lucky." "Like who?" Frankenberry asked as he retrieved a pool skimmer and attempted to push Lucky's body toward the side of the pool for retrieval. "Well, for starters, how about his children? Lucky had quite an estate and lots of estranged children thanks to his fondness for Irish hookers. Those kids always chasing him in the commercials? They were his own offspring. They were always after his lucky child support payments." "Yes, Lucky was loaded," Buzz blurted out. "He had it all. Cash, stocks and bonds, Bitcoin and doubloons, pots of gold, Swiss bank accounts, and real estate investment boons. But I didn't see any kids come into this house today, Sam interjected. Or anyone else, for that matter. He paused. Let's face it, one of us is the killer. The rest of the mascots stood silent for a moment. Finally, Snap ventured a comment. So, which one of us would have had a motive to kill Lucky? We were all his friends, his most trusted buddies. We've all been through thick and thin together. Whether we work for Kellogg's or General Mills, we've all had the same goal of selling the world's children onto delicious, sugary cereal, so they don't end up with that bland, nutritious oatmeal their parents want them to eat. How could any of us stoop to something like this? Well, there's one mascot here I think could have done this, Sam proposed. He pointed at the Frosted Flakes guru. Tony. He's had it in for the beloved leprechaun for a long time. Hey, I wouldn't kill anybody, Tony protested. Oh, you wouldn't. Frankenberry sneered at the large cartoon tiger. Like you didn't make your displeasure known about Lucky's Asian safaris that you claim are decimating your kind, especially with your criminal history. Remember all those game hunters they found outside your house? Those maulings were expunged from my record. Tony frantically tried to steer the accusations elsewhere. It was probably the toucan who did it. That's right, Buzz agreed. Remember, Sam, how you threatened Lucky on social media and you had to put out a public apology before Kellogg's would let you appear in commercials again? Sam leapt to his own defense. Well, he was nasty to me too. He said that Fruit Loops were nothing more than gay Cheerios. He should have been kicked off of Twitter too. He's guilty, Tony exclaimed as the other mascots took a harsh eye to the toucan. Tony, Pop yelled at the tiger. This isn't one of your stupid commercials. Why do you always talk like that? I had a stroke, Tony declared. This is a total witch hunt, Sam screamed. If I killed Lucky, you think I'd just leave his body in the pool for everyone to find? I'm a fucking bird. I could easily take him anywhere to dispose of the evidence. He looked around at his accusers. It was probably Chocula. Lucky had the goods on him, and the Count knew it. The crowd gasped, turning to the chocolatey vampire, who backed away slowly from all of them, except for his ward, Frankenberry. I don't know what you're talking about. I did not do anything. Lucky did not have anything on me. Oh yeah? Sam sneered at the Count. You knew that Lucky knew about your holdings in cocoa production companies operating in West Africa. Lucky knew that you were profiteering from child slave labor, using children to produce the chocolate used in your cereal. He was going to go to the papers about it, and he also knew about your little dalliances with European figures of royalty and your alleged ties to murderous East European strongmen like Vlad the Impaler and Ivan the Terrible. But what really made Lucky decide to come clean with everything he knew about you was a laptop he found in your castle, proving your involvement with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. You, sir, have a long and very bloody history, and Lucky was about to blow it all up for the world to see. That is why you killed him. You seriously did all of that? Snap gaped at Chocula. You should take a good hard look in whatever it is you vampires use instead of a mirror. I did not kill Lucky, the Count vigorously declared. And all that stuff is also a lie. Lucky vanted to frame me because I was always his biggest competition for cereals with marshmallows shaped like weird crap in them. I think we need to examine where the three little elves stand with all this, Frankenberry said. Snap, crackle, and pop. Maybe one of you snapped, then another one of you cackled, and then the third of you popped. Okay, what's our motive? Pop asked belligerently. Lucky and us go back many years. Us little guys gotta stick together, you know? Like you never had it in for the little leprechaun who works for your rival company, Buzz buzzed. He always beat you in the little people's competitions at the breakfast conventions. Plus, his cereal always did better with children aged 6 to 18, especially in those from wealthier households. Snap sniffled. Yes, he was our whimsical little rival, but that doesn't mean any of us would kill him. If it was anybody here who did it, it was probably the pink monstrosity standing over there. Frankenberry frowned as the crowd turned in his direction. Me? Screw you, you little elf. I would never kill Lucky. Oh, yeah? Snap asserted. Like you never got into Lucky's face about all the rumors he spread about you, about the name of your cereal meaning it contained genetically modified berries. Frankenberry shook his head sadly. Yeah, I guess it did hit me below the belt when he told people that. My sales went down over 20% because of him. Also, Lucky did sleep with your wife, Chocula added. She said sex with me was like sleeping with a corpse, Frankenberry cried. Well, I can't help that. I'm made of corpses. The hell was she doing with that little Irish runt anyway? His pecker is probably the size of a matchstick. Whoa, I think we best move on, Sam suggested. Wait a minute, we never talked about Buzz. Our flying friend here had a very good motive to off our beloved leprechaun. Okay, I see where this is going, but I am not the killer, Buzz screamed. Yes, Lucky interfered with my efforts to spread awareness of the threat to honeybees. He'd go around saying horrible things about my people, that we're all dangerous, invasive species who sting people for fun. He kept showing everyone that damn Wu-Tang Clan video where the killer bees attack New York. He even tried to convince Michael Bay to produce an action or horror movie called Night of the Bumblebees, all because my cereal beats his among the 18 to 34 female demographic. That's not the only reason, Sam insisted. It's well known in the industry that Lucky also encouraged the worker bees in your hives to unionize. Apparently, work conditions at your company are so bad that many of your employees have jumped ship to work for Amazon and Walmart. I mean, God forbid you provide your employees with full dental. What the hell do my bees need dental for? Buzz countered. They don't even have teeth. Okay, enough, Crackle yelled. This isn't getting us anywhere. It's clear that almost all of us had a motive to kill Lucky, but obviously only one of us actually did it. We have to start looking for clues. We need to check any video surveillance of the pool, examine Lucky's wounds, get an autopsy done, anything that might clue us in on how and when he died, and who was with him when he expired. No sooner did he finish talking than all the lights went out. The courtyard area was suddenly shrouded in darkness, with none of the mascots being able to see anything, despite some of them normally having excellent night vision. Then, only moments later, the lights came back on as quickly as they turned off. Everyone shrieked in horror as they saw Crackle laying on the ground, covered in blood and not moving. Crackle! Snap screamed. Who did this to you? The killer has struck again, Tony exclaimed. We have to find out who did this, Toucan yelled. Everyone, follow my nose and stick together. Suddenly a voice was heard from inside the house. Ahem, everyone. If you'll turn your attention to me, I think I know the solution to this perplexing mystery. The gathering turned their heads to see the newcomer, Captain Crunch, emerge from the mansion and into the pool yard. Captain! Pop cheered. What are you doing here? I came here earlier, saw what happened, and have been investigating the house ever since, the captain chuckled. I've become quite adept at sleuthing ever since my court-martial from the Navy forced me into early retirement. So, who was the killer? Frankenberry asked. And was it the same person who murdered Crackle just now? Crunch took a whiff from his pipe. Just calm down, and I will explain everything. First, here is an explanation of how it might have happened. How it might have happened. Tony did it, the captain announced, pointing at the shocked tiger in a fit of rage. Earlier today, he and Lucky were out by the poolside bar making chit-chat, and the conversation turned to health and nutrition. Tony repeatedly mocked the idea of marshmallows being considered a breakfast food, to which Lucky stated that marshmallows may not be a nutritious food, but that Tony was an endangered species and his mother was a whore. Tony immediately and swiftly murdered Lucky, inserted a knife into the body, and threw it into the pool to cover up the telltale slash wounds, and then bribed Buzz to kill the power using his stinger so that he could make an escape under cover of darkness. But when everyone gathered at the pool instead, Buzz had to sneak away in order to cut the electricity. Tony then took advantage of the darkness to kill Crackle before the others could start searching and find out it was him who performed the dastardly deeds. "How dare you! It wasn't me!" Tony exclaimed. "Captain," Buzz belted out, "maybe you should stop with your bullshit detective work and go back to manning those glory holes, or whatever else it is you did that got you kicked out of the Navy." Captain Crunch was undeterred. "Those are the facts, I'm afraid. As ugly as they may be, we have a double murderer and an accomplice amongst us right now." "You both are going to jail for this," Snap cried in between shedding tears for his lost companion. "The hell I am," Tony snarled as he bore his fangs belligerently. "You real deed." He leapt up and pounced onto the ground, roaring and throwing his claws aggressively at the other mascots. "You don't want to mess with the eye of this tiger," Buzz declared as he pointed his stinger at the crowd and prepared to dive bomb into them. "'Cause believe me, you won't be a survivor." "Well, this is all a fun little romp," Captain Crunch announced, just as the fracas was about to go into full drive. "But it isn't actually how it happened. How about this? How about this?" "Toucan Sam is the culprit," Captain Crunch proclaimed once the mascots were all at his attention again. Lucky was about to publish a memoir detailing Sam's troubled history as a cocaine addict. Sam was afraid the revelation would cause parents to boycott Fruit Loops and tank sales of his product. So he waited until Lucky was alone in the pool yard, then pecked him to death with that long, fruity beak of his. The rest of the mascots were shocked, but Sam did not attempt to deny the accusation. "Well, yes, Lucky did meet his end with me. But aren't you forgetting about your little part in this, oh Captain, my Captain?" When Captain Crunch did not respond, Sam was quick to continue. "When Captain Crunch arrived at the scene, I knew he would figure things out. So, I blackmailed him into covering up this crime by threatening to reveal to everyone his association with Jeffrey Epstein. So while we were all arguing back here, Crunch cut the power so that I could kill Crackle and take the heat off of myself for long enough to smuggle Lucky's body away from the house. But guess what, Captain? Our deal is off. You weren't supposed to reveal yourself in this manner, and now we're both fucked." "I too can. That is so," Captain Crunch proclaimed. "There is indeed a lesson in all this. Blackmail and hidden secrets are tempting to use, but are as dangerous to their wielders as they are to their targets. But do not despair, Toucan, for that is also not how it happened. Here is the real solution to this mystery." What really happened? "No one killed Lucky," the captain announced. "In the interval before his body was discovered by you all, I conducted a thorough examination. Though it may look like foul play, his death was actually caused by drowning as a result of acute alcohol poisoning. brought about by his ethnicity, as well as his despondency over losing yet another child paternity case, this time to a Brooklyn mother of 4. The rest of the serial mascots murmured. But then why was the body still in the pool, with the knife in his back, when we found him? Frankenberry asked. Suddenly Crackle rose to his feet, brushing himself off as he laughed. Thank the captain's cunning for that one. He cackled as Captain Crunch glared at him with eyes wide open. Crackle, what the hell, man? You totally stuck the knife in my back. Give it a rest, Cap. You did that yourself. Crackle started licking up the ketchup he had covered himself with as part of the ruse. After the autopsy, Captain Crunch put the knife in Lucky's back and threw it into the pool to make the scene look like murder, sullying the reputation of the other serial mascots, enough to make people forget about his court-martial, which was hurting sales of Crunch Berries. I was in on the scheme as well, because he promised to help me convince the bigwigs at Kellogg's to bring back Rice Krispie Treats cereal, which we all know was the bomb. So I faked my death in order to make it look like a double homicide and allow Captain to declare himself a hero for solving the mystery. Plus, it would have allowed me to cash in on a very lucrative life insurance policy once I resurfaced under the brand name Rice Titties, the world's first pornographic cereal. Then why did you just blow it all right now? The captain seethed. You and I were gonna be rich beyond our wildest dreams. I had second thoughts lying down here just now. I realized that no one really wants boobs in their breakfast cereal. Crackle shrugged. So sue me. The rest of the mascots simply stood in silence for a moment. Captain Crunch decided to slip away quietly, to which no one else took notice. As the evening turned into full-on nighttime, they still stood in the pool yard without making a sound. Well, Buzz finally said, anyone want to go over to the Trix Rabbit's house? He texted me that he just made some brownies that are very much not for kids. Hoodwinked. The only thing worse than tracing a witness 5 years after is to find out he has forgotten all about the crime, or at least the bits that matter. But Detective Syed was no greenhorn. He smiled at the 19-year-old who was sitting across the table devouring his second plate of chicken cafriel. So, is the chicken tangy enough? Yes, Detective. Thank you for buying me lunch. Daniel D'Souza grinned, his cheeks still plump with the spicy treat tucked in. Not at all. Thanks for agreeing to meet me here. Detective Syed swirled the sparkling water, then took another swig. It was a hot April afternoon, and Baga Beach looked bare. I know it's hard for you to talk about it, but what you can tell me can save a life. The fork fell into the green sauce, and the young man picked it back up. He wiped the corners of his mouth with the paper napkin Britos had stacked at every table, and met Detective Syed's gaze. Sir, I was just 14 at the time, and was visiting my uncle, and helped him in his gallery that sold souvenirs and other knickknacks. Detective Syed completed the statement, and cataloged the antiques. It was off-season, and he had very few customers walking in. So, you used to stay till the shop closed in the evening? Yes. And what time would it close? All shops in Panaji close around 8 p.m. I thought you knew it, the youngster snorted. So, you closed at 8 p.m. every evening? Yes. No exceptions? Not any that I can recall? Well, on the 30th of April, 2016, it was open at least till 9:30 p.m. Afterwards, the CCTV blanked out. Oh, it was the last day of the month. Maybe it was open for stock taking, staying open late at night after a whole day of no business? Detective Syed cocked his left eyebrow. Detective, can I leave now? I'm not feeling too well, and I can't recall much. Daniel tried to slide out of his bamboo chair. The detective's eyes held steady. Daniel, I have not even started asking anything yet. And you know I'm going to get to it one way or the other. So, why don't you help me out here? I can be of no help to you, detective. I shouldn't even have come here. It was a mistake. Daniel got up and hobbled on the slippery sand. Detective Syed cleared his throat and said in a voice that rose above the waves that crashed outside, we went through the old CCTV footage. It shows someone coming out of the shop at 9:30 p.m. Daniel stopped in his tracks and turned. He walked back to the table and growled. You know, detective, I was a minor at the time and can't be charged with anything. True, but you could have been sent to a juvenile detention center. Could have been, but wasn't. Wait, for what? Daniel's face turned red. For whatever you didn't confess to, Detective Syed said in an even tone as he gestured for Daniel to sit down. We are not here to talk about it, though. We are here to discuss the footage we got from Tanishq Jewelry 3 days ago. Daniels sported the same look as the fish kept on the ice at the entrance. So, Daniel, how about you sit down and I'll order you a bibinka? No, thanks. I'm full. What is it that you want to know? Daniel, on the night of 30th April 2016, between 9 to 10 p.m., robbers drilled a hole in the back wall of Swarna Jewelers and hauled the stuff worth INR 8 crore with them. As you already know, it's next to Pablo's gallery. You didn't hear anything? No. As my uncle said at the time, I was not there. Daniel rasped through a clenched jaw, which we know now is not true. How can you say that? I'm sure many own a hoodie of the same brand, but I'm sure they will not be wearing one on a humid April night. And who said anything about a hoodie? What hoodie? Daniel countered. Detective Syed let out a chuckle. He knew it was the best antidote for teenage bravado. Okay, the same one that the CCTV outside Tanishq captured 3 days ago. This one should be easier to remember. Daniel's face turned pale. What is the connection between the two? You tell me. The detective parlayed in a calm voice. Okay, I was helping my uncle at the store the night Swarna Jewelers was looted. But I swear, we didn't hear a thing. We had almost finished when a man in a dark blue hoodie turned up at the store asking for a lighter. He was wearing shades, and I found that suspicious. He didn't realize I was watching him as he took out his wallet and dropped a gun. My uncle at the register could not see it, but I did. The vase in my hand fell, and the next moment, the gun was pointed at me. Okay, what happened next? I can't remember what exactly happened. Daniel's eyes were like the floodgates about to be opened. Detective Syed leaned back on his tubby chair, rocked the back of his head in his knitted hands, and cajoled. Take a deep breath and try again. That bibinka is still on the offer? I think my uncle begged him to spare me. The man asked us to turn off the CCTV and stay in the shop, and left. Was that what happened? Yes. And you left the city the next day to return after 5 years? Yes. Only the new CCTV footage we found from Tanishk across the street tells a different story. Detective Syed leaned forward and drummed his fingers on the table. Which is? Daniel sniggered. The man in the hoodie never walked out of the gallery. Daniel's eyes went wide. But you said you saw him walk out. No, it was a 14-year-old who walked out wearing a dead man's hoodie. Daniel gulped air. Detective Syed half shut his eyes, scratched his chin, and continued, and walked back into Tanishk store 3 days ago. And quite possibly other places across Goa before that. I have a theory. He was tracked down by the fellow robbers of the dead man. They made him an offer he could not refuse. Be a part of their gang, or go to juvie for murder. Daniel's face went blank. He whispered in a trembling voice, "Nice theory. I came back as I got admission into a college in the city, which is a nice cover-up. Daniel, you don't have to tell me what happened at the gallery that night. And I think I know the reason why you wore the same hoodie. Which is? Supposing your theory is correct, you wanted to be rescued. Is that a possibility?" Daniel's eyes begged, still too scared to be hopeful. "Yes, if you can help nab the gang and finish eating bibinka